This is Jamie Amelio's story. Jamie's a guest on Trailblazers Impact Podcast. She's the author of Staying Bothered, and she started the most impressive school in Cambodia. She also has impactful advice on today's teenagers, which will be aired this summer on Trailblazers Impact Podcast. I knew she'd have some interesting advice for us on dealing with the pandemic. So, welcome, Jamie Amelio.
Thank you, Nan. It's good to see you. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances that we're having to chat again, but we will get through this.
We will. Start with how it's impacting your life.
Well, I can tell you as a CEO of a nonprofit that things came to a screeching halt because I spend my life talking to people about how we can help others. And right now we're talking to people about how we have to help our neighbors. What's happening right in front of us in our own country, in our own community, in our own little neighborhoods. There's no way out, and there's really nothing else that I feel comfortable asking anyone for other than to help my own neighbors. It's a tough one. And I'm sure all NGOs are going through the same thing right now.
I think all NGOs and actually all businesses are going through much of the same thing. You know, everybody's trying to convert over to working remotely and trying to convert over to working at home. You've been doing a lot of that all along, haven't you?
I have. However, I have 3 of my 6 children now under my roof and my husband who was commuting Monday through Friday. So I've gone to working with a full house. I was working at home, yes. However, not with anyone else around. And now it's adjusting on several different levels, along with having to cope with the anxiety of what's happening in our outside world. It's tough.
What's happening with your kids? You know, are you trying to keep up schooling in some way, or tell me about that?
I am. I actually have a teenager who's 15 and she's a freshman in high school. So she went on for spring break a few weeks ago and is not going back. I have 2 of my college boys that are home from college. They packed up their dorms and have come home and are trying to do remote learning. And it's a whole other world with college age students because they are nocturnal. There's no getting up at 8 or 10, and this whole idea of setting a schedule for them and making sure that you can help them get through all that, for me, is not going so well. So we are all adjusting to different schedules. And in the midst of this, really trying to talk about what's happening with COVID-19. And it's changing daily. So to keep that conversation going with older kids is definitely, it's tough, but we're figuring it out as we go.
So tell people where you are right now and kind of what's happening in your environment.
I'm in Austin, Texas, and it's beautiful. I feel very fortunate that we can get outside in a yard. Texas is a big state. So for all of those folks in the middle of cities that are not able to get out and move around, my heart breaks for them. We are actually working very hard on making sure that we can help our city and figuring out where we can put our efforts into those that need us right around here, the small businesses, all the grocery stores that are working so hard. All those folks are working overtime. So in the book, in Staying Bothered, I actually talk about how you find your bother and stick with it. But now we have bothered all over us. There's no way not to be bothered. So it's a matter of dialing that back right now and trying to figure out who we can help and how we can help the most and at a safe distance. The kids are not quite getting that just yet. They understand, but it's now a new way of life.
And it must be kind of different when you've got a lot of these older kids, teenagers and older kids, because they're so used to being on their devices. I mean, they're used to their cell phones and 24/7 and all that stuff. But are they missing the social aspect of it?
I think that's the toughest part. If you ask my youngest, she's the 15-year-old, I say, what's the toughest part about this? And she says being with her friends. And it's interesting how this has gone from me putting a timer on their phones or get off of social media to now this is their survival. The screens are actually saving them. They are. I never thought I would say, why don't you go FaceTime your friends? And my one son that is a gamer, he loves staying up late at night and playing his games. And never before have I been really grateful that this kid can get on and do something. So things in that mode have completely changed 180 degrees. I'm so grateful they can connect. Imagine if this were to happen in the 70s.
Yeah.
Kids they wouldn't even be able to talk to each other. There'd be probably the National Guard in the street with megaphones. We're getting news instantly. So I am grateful for the fact that my kids can get on these screens. And you just have to let it go. I've learned to back off a little bit here.
Well, having the communication that we do in the way we do, and you're right. I mean, if it was back in the 70s or even probably the 80s, maybe even the 90s.
Yes, it's true. Yeah. Think about it. Instant information right now.
So what are the things you're missing the most,
I'm missing interacting with people. There's no doubt about it. And that sounds like a very general answer, but for me not to be able to get out and talk with young people and inspire my team and talk to people about the good that we're doing with caring for Cambodia and building schools in Cambodia, and then staying bothered about other issues that you can actually make a difference with and do something. It's tough not to be face to face with that. I am passionate about what I believe in, but you can only feel so much right now. It's with a screen between us and a camera, it's a tough one. It really is. But it pushes me even more to talk about making a difference and what we can do right now. What can we do to get through this crisis? Because we will get through it, but what can we do today? And that's been something I've been talking with my friends about and my colleagues of our new normal.
So what are you doing about it?
Well, I'm making a lot of lists. It's funny, I just made this one. I'm going to pick it up because I was saying that make a list of everyone that you actually want to talk to or have thought about it at some point, but haven't done it. And then make yourself accountable for it. I talk a lot about in my book of just getting yourself started to want to do something you're passionate about can sometimes be difficult. But you're in front of a screen anyway. You can literally take 10 seconds and write some names down. And then jot something down on a piece of paper that says, check your list. I think we're going to have to do that right now as a nation, to kind of look away from what's going on just for a minute so that we can decompress and then start over again and helping those that really need it. So I'm actually suggesting to some of my friends and colleagues to kind of run toward this, make ourselves do something different at home instead of away from it, and try and just take in all this news and bad energy that's being thrown at us like a meteor shower. You've got to work really hard at it. So make yourself accountable and do some lists.
And what are you doing for family life at home?
We are really trying to get together at dinner time. I just did something that I have never done before. I wrote a letter to my team in Caring for Cambodia and Staying Bothered. And I said, because of COVID-19, these are unprecedented times. I am going to take this opportunity that I have with my family under one roof. I don't know when it will ever happen again. And I'm making office hours for my work. I'm working from 8 to 2, Monday through Thursday. And the rest of that time, I'm going to be with my family. Whether they want to be in the same room with me or not, I'm going to be available. I'm just going to be available. And we'll see what happens after that.
Do you have anybody in the elderly category that you're particularly worried about?
I do. Of course I do. I have people that are like, my parents have long been gone, but I have folks that are like my second mom and my second dad. And I'm so worried about them. But I have to tell you, some of these feisty older people are going to play cards and they're going to the grocery store. And I'm saying, no, don't go, don't do it. But it's the young ones we want to keep away from them, no doubt. But some of them are they're set on going and doing things, which is challenging because you want to say, come on, we can't. It's tough. That one's really hard.
And you wonder whether they're kind of feeling like, hey, I've lived my life. If I die, it isn't going to be that serious, or whether they're just not taking it seriously. I mean, How could you not?
I don't know. It's interesting. And some of these people have lived through war, a different kind of war. Of course, the Vietnam War, and my brother was on the front lines, and he's staying at home. He's much older than I am, but his attitude is, I made it through that one. I'll probably make it through this one. So it is an interesting conversation to have, because you don't want to judge anyone's decisions for the most part, but yet we're pushed into this situation now where not only are we saying, no, stay back, don't come in, and some of us still feel bad. I mean, I'm from the South. For me not to give someone a hug is really hard. And then I almost sound rude, back off, back off. But you have to right now. So everything is shifting to a new normal of safe distancing, and the decision that we make affects someone else's life. It really does. It's happening, and unfortunately it's getting worse every day. So it'll get worse before it gets better, but the better on the other side will make us stronger.
Do you know anybody that actually has contracted it?
I do. And they're doing fine right now. They were just in the hospital the other day, in ICU, as a matter of fact, and they're home. I have another friend that is not there at home. She went to the hospital. She got tested positive and is back at home. So she's younger. She's in her mid 40s. She's doing fine. So, and I imagine that's going to change here fairly quickly. And my team in Cambodia, that's a whole other story of the dichotomy and two realities of what's going on in the information we get, as opposed to the information they don't get. So that's been tough.
What's happening with them over there? Are they sequestered or are they quarantined at all?
There was most recently, they closed down all of our schools, and the schools in the entire country. All the celebrations right now is Khmer New Year. It's like their Chinese New Year was set to happen. Everything was canceled. They have reportedly a little over 120 cases, which is impossible. They obviously have more, but they don't have the test kits that we have. They have nothing that we have. And Siem Reap is a city where tourism is the main industry. And now there are no flights going into Siem Reap. There's no tourists in Cambodia. Hotels are shutting down left and right. So they're dealing with their economy. We're dealing with ours. But we're getting information on what we think is really, really happening. And they're just not getting it. So and they actually have been counting on me to give them the information that I see from the outside. So that's going to be very, very rough over the next 6 or 8 months.
It does seem like the testing standards are so different from state to state, because I think I just heard you say that the woman had symptoms, went to the hospital and got the test, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then was allowed to go home.
She was positive. She was allowed to go home. She went self-isolation, self-quarantine. And I don't know exactly what the rules are supposed to be. I must say they're changing the information that's coming. New York is so different from Texas right now, but I don't know that we're that far behind it. And we've got New Orleans, Louisiana right next to us, which apparently is soon to be the next epicenter. And people can drive over to Texas, to get out of there. So you have to really pay attention, I would say.
Well, what I find interesting is my daughter had all the symptoms, called her doctor, and the doctor said, there's just no way that you're going to be able to get a test, because our two criteria are you a healthcare worker? Number one, and if the answer is no, then are you willing to stay in the hospital? Are you bad enough to go to the hospital and stay? And if she did not answer yes to one of those, she could not get a test. Wow. Even though she had all the symptoms and they said they would send her an inhaler, that was their response.
Boy, we just don't know. That goes to show you, we do not have it figured out yet. There isn't really a plan. We are making this up as we go. Thank God that we have some real professionals on the front lines to understand the infographics and the information that they're getting, and they can pass that on to us. But no doubt that each state is really figuring out what's best for them.
Because there really isn't a federal program,
right.
Federal program. So they're having to figure it out state by state. But that's a concern when you have relatives in a state and you don't know how they're handling it, what they're going to do.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
scary from one place to another to not have something you can count on, or one way that you know it's going to be, because you just don't.
Yeah. And the masks, I think, are a very good example of that. It wasn't literally 2 weeks ago where we're being told that the masks are not really that big of a deal. You don't need them. And now all of a sudden there's a discussion of, well, perhaps every American does need a mask. So we have to figure out what we can do best for our sanity right now. If we're healthy and we're well, we have to really try and just spread that good energy, because otherwise all of this will pull us down. And I know the first few days, the anxiety of watching the news was an absolute battle to just make a conscious decision to stop watching it, just because you can't do anything about it other than stay at home, wash your hands, the obvious of what we know. But in the bigger picture, right now, we're forced to actually either run towards it and just get through the struggle, or really back off and just watch and see what happens, because we can't do anything. And God bless those healthcare workers. That in itself, I think, is the biggest crisis that we're facing. These people literally are putting their life on the line every minute. It's tough.
Well, it looks like some of the younger people, including in our family, Molly thought that her husband had already been through it, but they didn't know what it was. It was kind of like early in February. And then her 6-year-old got sick. And again, they thought it was the flu or something like that. And now she is. And it seemed like it was, it was hard to go through, but they got through it. And now what I'm wondering is, well, is she going to be all right? But number two is there going to be an immunity that is built up so that at least they won't have to worry about it?
We pray for that, no doubt about it. I had the flu probably a month ago, what I thought was the flu. And then I went to New York. I was actually on Broadway the day before they completely shut down. I had meetings. I was working there. And there was the feeling of, okay, we're being careful. This is something to definitely be serious about. And of course, now I wonder, well, wait, how do I know I didn't have COVID-19 and I just made it through? Those are the things that would be helpful for us to know right now, for sure, as I'm sure for your daughter and her family. Did we have it? Do we have an immunity? Does that mean we can go out and help others in a more aggressive way? Boy, it would be nice to know that.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you've said. Have you got anything else you'd like to add to it, Jamie?
I think one really important message for parents out there with our kids at home, all of us that are trying to get these schedules together and help them get through school, at the end of this, it's not going to be about the grades that they made. They're going to remember how they felt through this. So I think it's important if we all just take a moment and really think about that, because we will remember that too, how we felt. Were we scared? Did we have someone to comfort us? And what that really means. So parents out there, as hard as it is, just let your kids decompress and get through this on their own just a little bit. So I appreciate you having me, Nan.
Thanks so much, Jamie.